Right, this afternoon I'm going to talk about learning analytics, and particularly about how we're approaching learning analytics through the EmployID project. Now, first of all, the first thing people ask me, of course, is, Graham, we've heard that word around learning analytics, but what exactly is it? Well, SOLAR, which is the Society of Learning Analytics Research, has actually agreed a definition. They say learning analytics is the measurement, collection, analysis and reporting of data about learners and their contexts for purposes of understanding, optimizing learning and the environments in which it occurs. Now, I think that definition is quite important. Learning analytics is about understanding and optimizing learning and the environment. It's not about performance measurement, because sometimes these things get confused. Now, Eric Duval goes on to explain that learning analytics is really about collecting digital traces. And of course, as our society increasingly becomes an online world, we're all leaving digital traces. Now, lots of those digital traces will be on things like Facebook, and probably don't have a lot to do with learning. But an awful lot of our social interaction does involve learning. And for me, one of the big promises of learning analytics is to collect data which can help us begin to understand how informal learning as well as formal learning takes place, and particularly how learning and informal learning occurs within the workplace. Now, sadly, up to now, there's been very little research into workplace learning analytics. Nearly all the focus of research and development has been in schools and in universities and in formal education. Now, of course, formal education is very different, because what they've tended to focus on there is to look at learning management systems and virtual learning environments, so formal online systems, and to swallow up all the data from those and try and make sense of it. Now, that's okay, but sometimes I get the impression they're collecting together huge amounts of data and then trying to think what use it might be, and I don't think that's the right approach. In fact, I don't even think that learning analytics is really about big data. Learning analytics is about relevant data, it's about valid data, and above all, it's about actionable data. Data we can do something with. And I think the approach we need to take should be, first of all, to plan out what questions you're trying to find. What are you trying to find out through learning analytics? Define the questions first. Then we can start looking and seeing what digital traces we have or don't have, or what we need, and where the gaps are. But first work out what you're trying to find out. Now, I think in EmployID, we're trying to find out a lot of things about social learning and the relationship between social learning and identity transformation. And we've already defined what we call a social learning platform, which informs our pedagogic approaches to learning interventions within the workplace. And that social learning platform is comprised of support for facilitation roles, for facilitating the learning of others. It's supporting networking in teams. It's providing social networking facilitation. It's supporting cross-organisational dialogue. It's supporting organisational networks. It's supporting networking in personal networks. And we're talking about structuring learning and identity transformation activities. Now, you see, if we were to take each of those and think, what questions do we want to know? What do we need to find out about, let's take one, facilitation roles. For instance, we ran recently a pilot of a MOOC. Now, we've got quite a lot of learning analytics data from that MOOC because we ran it on the Open University's Future Learn platform. Now, I'd love to know who played what facilitation roles within that MOOC, because I have a very strong feeling that the facilitators were moving between different participants, as well as the trainers, as well as EmployID people. And I think we can probably learn a lot about facilitator roles just from analysing those digital traces we had from that MOOC. But I think we can develop around each of those features of social learning and start to identify the questions we're trying to query and what data we might be able to find for what I would call a more holistic approach to workplace learning analytics. Now this works in its first phases. It's the first time I've actually done any interview about what we're doing. We'll see if it works. I hope I can come back in 6 months and report to you on what progress we are or we're not making. Thank you.